We've all been there. Someone you care about starts pulling away. They don't text back as fast, they cancel plans, they act distant, and instantly your mind screams they're rejecting me. But what if I told you that in some cases this isn't rejection at all? What if their silence, their hesitation, their disappearing act is actually a sign of something far deeper, a hidden obsession they don't even know how to express? Today, we're going to rip the cover off the psychology of the avoidant, so you can see the truth behind the mask, reclaim your confidence, and stop letting fear write your story. Sometimes it's the most intense form of hidden obsession you will ever encounter. Distance is not always disinterest. Sometimes it's obsession hiding in plain sight. And most people have been programmed to misread this signal their whole life. You've been told that if someone steps back, if they pull away, if they disappear, that's your cue to move on, to accept defeat, to take it as a sign you weren't enough. But let me shake that belief to its core, because there are moments deep and rare where that very distance is not a sign of rejection at all. It's a sign that you have gotten under their skin so deeply, so profoundly that they can't stand in front of you without feeling completely exposed. It's like you've walked into their inner world, set off alarms they didn't even know they had, and now every instinct they possess is screaming at them to retreat. Not because you're unwanted, but because you're too wanted. This is the paradox of hidden obsession. The more they feel, the more dangerous it becomes for them to stay close. You become the mirror that reflects everything they've hidden from themselves, their vulnerability, their longing, their fear of losing control. And that mirror is almost unbearable to look into. So what do? They run. They cloak themselves in silence. They create space. Think in space will weaken the pull. Think in distance will break the spell you've cast on them. But here's the truth they don't want you to see. That space is not empty. It's charged. It's electric. It's packed with thoughts of you day and night, images, moments, imagined conversations, every detail about you replaying in loops they can't shut off. They're not ignoring you. They're drowning in you. And yet, instead of showing you that, they retreat because in their mind, obsession is a threat. Desire is dangerous. Getting too close means losing themselves. And for someone who's terrified of vulnerability, that's the ultimate nightmare. You see, obsession is not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, almost ghost-like. It moves in the shadows. See the constant rereading of your messages, the quiet scanning of your social media, the way they notice every change in your voice or your mood, even from afar. They don't announce it. They live it in silence. Here's where most people make the critical mistake. They confuse that silence with a lack of care, when in reality, it's the silence of someone standing too close to the sun and needing to step back before they burn. That's the level of intensity we're talking about here, and if you don't understand it, you'll miss it every single time. You'll tell yourself stories that destroy your own self-worth. If they care, they'd be here. If they wanted me, they'd fight for me. If they loved me, they'd stay. But not everyone is built to handle the gravitational pull of real connection. Some people have to take a step back just to survive the weight of it. And you standing on the outside can't always tell the difference between rejection and a soul trying to protect itself from something it's not ready to surrender to. This is why I'm telling you, you need to see beyond the obvious. Look at the pattern, feel the energy. If they disappear but still orbit your world, if they are absent, but you still feel them everywhere, that's not the mark of someone indifferent. That's the mark of someone caught in a storm of their own making. You've got to understand human behavior at a deeper level. Attraction doesn't operate on logic. It operates on fear, desire, and the subconscious, the avoidant, the guarded, who feels too much and shows too little. They are at war with themselves. One part of them wants to collapse into you, to give in to what they feel, to drown in it completely. The other part is fighting for control, gasping for air, terrified of losing their independence or getting hurt. That's why they don't just step back. They retreat like it's a survival mission, and to you, it feels cruel. It feels cruel. It feels like a shut door, but underneath it's panic, not apathy. It's obsession struggling to stay hidden because it feels safer in the dark than in the light. And here's the wildest part. The more intense the obsession, the more intense the retreat, the stronger the pull toward you, more they have to convince themselves they can live without it. This is why you can't take distance at face value. This is why you can't let yourself collapse every time someone backs away. Because sometimes the space between you is not a rejection letter. It's a holding pattern. It's someone circling your orbit because they can't quite land without risking everything. And if you misread that, if you assume the worst, you rob yourself of understanding a truth that could change the way you see every relationship in your life. The truth that distance in certain hearts is not the end of the story. It's the proof that the story runs deeper than you imagined. Stop making their fear into your wound. Their avoidance is not a measure of your worth. I want you to let that sentence sink so deep that it rewrites the entire way you respond to people pulling away from you. Because right now, too many of you are letting somebody else's inability to love openly become a weapon you turn against yourself. The moment they withdraw, you start spiraling. What did I do wrong? Was I too much? Was I not enough? Should I have been quieter, prettier, smarter, calmer? You start tearing yourself apart brick by brick because someone couldn't stand in the heat of their own feelings without retreating. But hear me, their step back, their silence, their distance has nothing to do with your value. It's about their relationship with vulnerability, personal history, their unhealed wounds, their nervous system screaming, danger, danger, love will hurt you. That's their programming, not your truth. Yet here you are holding yourself hostage because you've mistaken their reaction for your reflection. And this is where people lose themselves. They forget that human behavior is almost never a clean cause, an effect equation. Someone avoids you, not necessarily because of something you've done, but because of something they can't face within themselves. Maybe they've been abandoned before. Maybe love for them always came with strings, with control, with pain. Maybe when they were most vulnerable, they were also most betrayed. So now, when you show up radiating presence, connection, possibility, they don't feel safe enough to lean in. They feel the intensity and mistake it for danger. And instead of saying scared, they create distance. That distance is their coping mechanism. But here's the trap. You've been conditioned to take every gap personally, to believe that love equals closeness, and anything else must be the absence of it. You've been trained to believe that if someone wants you, they will always come forward with clarity and boldness. But that's not how fear works. Fear scrambles clarity. Fear hides boldness. Fear makes people run from the very thing they crave. And yet, instead of seeing their fear for what it is, you twist it into a verdict against yourself. You go into self, lame, self-harrier, trying to morph into whatever you think might make them stay. You chase, you beg, you shrink, you compromise. Every time you do that, you're telling yourself, I must be the problem. But you are not the problem. You are the trigger, and there's a massive difference. You are the person who woke something up inside them that they weren't ready to face. That's not a flaw. That's not a crime. That's not a downgrade of your worth. That's proof of your impact. Think about it. If you were truly insignificant to them, They wouldn't need to pull away to feel safe. They just feel nothing at all. Distance is often the move of someone who feels too much, not someone who feels nothing. But you have to hold that truth in your bones, or you will let their avoidance turn into the story of your unworthiness. You need to learn to stand steady in the storm of someone else's fear. When they step back, you don't need to rush to fill the gap with apologies or overcompensation. You don't need to go into performance mode, proving you're lovable, proving you're safe, proving you're worth the risk. That's where you lose your power. Your worth is not up for negotiation based on someone else's capacity to handle intimacy. Their fear belongs to them. Their distance belongs to them. You don't have to hold it. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to become less so they can handle you more easily. Let them retreat if they need to. Let them wrestle with themselves. You stay rooted in the truth that you are enough exactly as you are. Because here's the harsh reality. If you keep letting their fear dictate your self-perception, you will keep shrinking yourself to fit inside the boundaries of someone else's limitations. And do you know what that does? It erases the very person they were drawn to in the first place. The spark they felt wasn't from you being cautious, quiet, small. It was from you showing up in your full presence. You were magnetic because you were real. But when you abandon yourself to try and be safe, for them, you become a shadow of that. Here's the irony. They might come back once they face their fear only to find you've dimmed so much they can't feel the same connection anymore. You didn't lose them because you were too much. You lost them because you stopped being yourself. I want you to understand that the most powerful thing you can do in the face of avoidance is to keep your frame, keep your energy, keep your self-worth intact. You don't chase someone into their fear. You stand where you are knowing that your value isn't diminished by someone else's inability to stand in the fire with you. Sometimes the only way they'll ever learn is by feeling the absence of your presence while they hide. And sometimes they won't learn at all, but that's not your loss. The people who can meet you where you are will never need you to make yourself smaller. They will never confuse your intensity with danger. They will never punish you for making them feel something real. You have to stop taking it personally when someone can't receive you. The world is full of people who are hungry for love but terrified of it at the same time. And they will test your boundaries, your patience, and your faith in yourself. If you keep letting their fear become the measure of your worth, you'll spend your whole life running in circles trying to win battles that were never yours to fight. When you finally break that pattern, when you finally see avoidance for what it is, you'll stop asking what's wrong with me and start asking what's going on with them. And in that moment, you take your power back. Sometimes silence is them thinking about you every single night, but being too afraid to be seen. And that's the part no one tells you, 'cause on the outside, silence feels like nothing. It feels like emptiness. It feels like being erased. You check your phone, no message. You open your social media, no likes, no comments, no signs they even remember you exist. And so your mind starts to spin, building its own brutal narrative. They must have moved on. They must not care. You must have meant nothing. But that's the lie that the surface tells you, because what's going on beneath is often far more complicated. For some people, the absence of action is not an absence of feeling. It's the presence of feeling so strong they can't risk exposing them. They sit in the dark with it. They lie in bed and replay every conversation. They notice the way you laugh, the way your voice changes when you're excited, way your eyes shift when you're holding something back. They think about reaching out 100 times but stop themselves because the thought of stepping into the light with those feelings is overwhelming. You need to understand something about the human heart when it's tangled up with fear. For some, longing feels safer in silence. As long as they keep it in their head, it's pure, it's perfect, it's untouched by rejection or risk. They speak it. Once they act on it, it becomes real. And real means vulnerability. Real means exposure. Real means the possibility of loss. So, they choose to live in the quiet fantasy, keeping you close in thought, but far in reality. This is the cruel paradox. You might think they've forgotten you, when in fact, they've never stopped carrying you around. You're a constant, but a constant they can only manage in secret. And while you're doubting yourself, you're wondering if you were ever worth their time, they're stuck in their own private loop, haunted by you in the spaces they don't show anyone else. Here's the thing, silence has weight. It's not just an empty gap where words should be. Silence can be thick, charged, alive with everything unspoken. Sometimes that silence is an entire world they're living in when they can't invite you into, because it would mean letting down walls they've kept up for years. Maybe they've been hurt. Maybe they've learned to equate closeness with danger. Maybe they've been told their whole life that emotions are weaknesses to be hidden, never displayed. So when they meet someone who makes them feel in ways they can't control, their instinct isn't to run toward it. It's to retreat and process it alone where no one can see them unravel. And you feel that retreat like a door slammed in your face. But what if I told you that behind that door they're sitting there in the dark thinking about you more than they ever admit to themselves? What if I told you the silence you hate so much is actually where they hide the proof of how much they care? Not all love is loud. Not all obsession announces itself. Some people's deepest connections are invisible from the outside because they've learned to love in secret as a way to protect themselves from pain. It doesn't mean the connection isn't real. It doesn't mean you didn't matter. It just means they can't bear to let you see them feeling it. You have to stop assuming silence equals nothing. Sometimes it equals everything. Sometimes the quiet is where they feel you most. In the stillness, they're alone when the distractions fade, and the truth presses against them so hard they can't escape it. They might scroll past your picture a dozen times and stop every time studying the details, remembering the exact way you looked at them once. They might hear a song and instantly think of you, the memory hitting so hard they have to turn it off. They might drive past somewhere you went together and feel that knot in their chest that reminds them how deep it went. And yet instead of sending a message, instead of showing up, they swallow it all back down because letting you see it would mean surrendering to it. And that's the tragedy. You sitting there thinking you were nothing, sitting there unable to show your everything. Two people stuck in different prisons, yours built from self-doubt, theirs built from fear of exposure. And the bars on their side are just as real. Even if you can't see them, you can't free them by waiting in the silence for them to finally speak. You can't spend your life measuring your worth by whether or not someone finds the courage to act on what they feel. Silence may hold meaning. It's not your responsibility to interpret it in a way that keeps you stuck. Because here's the harsh truth. Some people will think about you every night for years and still never let you see it. Some people will love you from a distance forever because the risk of being seen feels bigger than the reward of being close. You can waste your whole life waiting for the moment they break their silence. Or you can accept that silence might be the only way they know how to keep you in their mind, in their heart, in a place you can't touch. And when you accept that, you take back your power. You stop treating their fear as proof you're unworthy. You stop making their inability to act the mirror that defines your beauty, your importance, your value. It was never the absence of love. It was love trying to hide from itself. And that's the truth most people never see because they've been taught to measure love by its visibility. If it's not loud, if it's not constant, if it's not obvious, they assume it's not there. But love doesn't always show up in fireworks and open declarations. Sometimes it shows up like a shadow, quiet, unassuming, always there if you're not looking directly at it. For some people, isn't this confident, fearless force? For them, love is dangerous territory, a place where they've been hurt before, a place where they've lost themselves, a place where the very thing they needed became, they need him, the thing that destroyed them. When love shows up again, real love, deep love, it doesn't feel safe. It feels like a threat. It feels like standing on the edge of a cliff and feeling both the terror of falling and the irresistible pull to jump. When someone has lived their whole life avoiding that edge, they'll do anything to keep themselves from going over. That's why they hide. They hide in distractions. They hide in distance. They hide in pretending they don't care as much as they do. You have to understand is that love in its purest form strips people bare. It exposes everything they've tried to keep buried. It tears down the walls they've spent years building. It forces them to look at their fears, their insecurities, their past, and ask themselves if they're willing to risk all of that for what they feel. And for someone who's not ready, that's unbearable. So, they play games with themselves. They convince themselves it's not real. They pick fights. They point out flaws. They create reasons to pull back. They do everything they can to smother the intensity because to them, the intensity is the danger. They'll say they're busy, they're not ready, they need space. They can't do a relationship right now, but underneath all those excuses is the same truth. They feel something so powerful it terrifies them, and they would rather hide from it than surrender to it. And if you don't know this, you'll misread the signs every single time. You'll see the hesitation and call it disinterest. You'll see the distance and call it apathy. You'll see the lack of consistency and call it rejection. But in reality, that's trying to hide from itself leaves a trail. It's in the way they look at you when they think you're not watching. In the way they remember the smallest details you told them. The way they pop back into your life after weeks or months because they can't stay gone for long. It's in the way they check in just enough to know you're still there, even if they won't let themselves come closer. You can feel it if you pay attention. That push and pull, that contradiction between their actions and the energy they give off. And that's because their actions are trying to protect them, but their energy is betraying them. It's important to know that hiding love isn't a strategy they consciously plan out like some manipulative game. It's instinct, it's survival. It's the reflex of someone who's learned that exposure leads to pain.